Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to head up to Pierre, South Dakota, and meet up with Sallie Doty. And Sallie's an interesting lady. She was a competitive swimmer in college, and now she's out stalking mule deer and whitetails with a bow. So, Sallie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we connected on social media. I'm glad that you were interested enough to get on the show because I love having ladies on the show and to talk about women in the outdoors. And we'll just start off right there. How did you get into hunting?
Well, I'd always been interested. I actually grew up, kind of a backstory on myself. Grew up in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, so not a lot of hunting opportunities there. My family really didn't hunt. They had nothing against it, or we just had other hobbies and activities that we did. Nothing against it, just had no interest, but I always kind of had a little bit of interest. And so I just kind of after college was in Pierre, or I was in actually Sioux Falls right after college. And it was kind of getting immersed in that culture in the Dakotas. And I actually met my now husband, then boyfriend, and he was all into hunting and fishing. So I knew if I was going to hang out with this guy, I was probably going to learn some stuff. So certainly an experience. And he was very good about introducing me to it and kind of slowly easing me in. The first thing that I wanted to do was to get a bow because that was kind of the big trend was everybody was, I mean, it's been around for a long time, but back then it was everybody was getting bows. And so he bought me just this little Bear Apprentice back in 2012. And I practiced and practiced and practiced with that bow. And it was a good little bow. And I've since got newer bows since then. But I was able to, in December of 2012, shoot my first whitetail doe. He only allowed me a doe. He said, the first year, I don't want you to have the shakes. And I mean, I still had shakes, of course, but just get used to this kind of stuff, just used to the animals being around you. And we'll just, take a doe, have the meat and enjoy it, and then see if you like this experience, which I ultimately did and had a lot of fun with.
And so you've gone on to take some mule deer also.
Yep. So where I live, if anybody knows anything about Pierre, it's kind of the central mecca of where whitetail and mule deer meet. So if I want to go hunt, we kind of make that decision. Do we want to go an hour west or an hour east today? Sometimes when we hunt, do we want to go after whitetail or do we want to go after mule deer, which is an awesome and cool decision to have to make. So yeah, that was my first experience was actually a mule deer, which since then I have harvested a few, but more so whitetail after that. But mule deer are just a whole different kind of breed of themselves, and they're just fun to watch and fun to watch out in the breaks bouncing around. And it's just been a great experience getting to know the land here since I'm not from here and just all the animals that are a part of the central portion of South Dakota.
Now, I understand that South Dakota is kind of split up East River and West River. So basically what you're saying is the whitetails are East River and the mule deer are West River. Is that correct?
It's somewhat correct. It depends on the area more so. When you go west, you're going to see more of the breaks in the hills, and that's where a lot of the mule deer are going to be. But if you find a river bottom, and even in West River, that's where a lot of the whitetails predominantly hang out. But roughly, yeah, kind of eastern portion is certainly just whitetail country. But when you get into the central to western portion, you begin to see a lot of the mule deer. So we have a healthy mix of both species here.
So how many years do you spend hunting?
It depends how many tags I get sometimes. If you draw the lucky straw, you get to get out a lot more. If I don't draw, we're always still getting archery tags. So there's always work to be done there. I'd say, it's a good portion of my September, October, and November. We end by, usually mid-December, so I don't get out a whole lot. We ice fish here, do that in the winter time, and then get out after turkeys in the spring. But we don't have an extended deer season into January, February like some states do. So, about half the year, I'd say that's probably a fair guess.
Now, are you a rifle hunter also or just archery?
I do both. I hunt with a rifle, and I tell myself I allow myself as many tags as they're willing to give out. I'm going to try all forms of hunting. I'm not biased one way or another. I do love my bow. I love shooting it. I love everything about it. But it's also nice to understand weaponry and understand how things work and understand ballistics. And so I'm kind of becoming more of that now and just understanding windage and all that kind of stuff, those factors that go into harvesting an animal from maybe further away than you would with a bow.
Want to become a smarter deer hunter? Know when to hunt, where to hunt, how to hunt? Well, Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 was created to do exactly that, because many people have told me they struggle with spending all days in the wood and never seeing a deer, only shooting does and young deer, leaving the woods empty-handed way too many times. Found Mr. Wonderful, but just couldn't get on him, having difficult finding a place to hunt, recognizing possible mistakes you're making every year, having tried and failed to find qualified mentors who deliver results. If you had these frustrations or struggles, go to deerhuntinginstitute.com, and there you'll find a 13-module course to help you solve these problems. Again, go to deerhuntinginstitute.com and find some answers. What caliber do you shoot in your rifle?
I have a 6.5 Creedmoor. So is that a 2? I can never remember the actual number, but it's a 6.5 Creedmoor. And so I know that's becoming the popular caliber that everybody's kind of...
It's the hot date these days. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah. If I was going to buy another gun, I'd buy that, because I have a 280 and I have a 25-06. And so it just kind of funnels right in between, as I understand it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I get so many questions about it. I shoot a Savage and is this gun going to be good for my daughter? How's the fit? You know, I get a lot of those questions just because they hear that the 6.5 is the new greatest thing out there, even though it's been around for a while, but it's just kind of taken off these last few years really, 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 really well.
Yeah, extremely popular, extremely accurate, and it's a great cartridge, as there are many great cartridges out there. Mm-hmm. My best gun is still my 30-06. That's the best rifle, and it's killed untold number of game, from elk to mountain goats to coyotes, everything in between.
There's nothing wrong with that. That'll do the job, as I say. So whatever you're comfortable with and you can use, by all means, go out and do it.
Good sage wisdom, because that's what I learned a long time ago, is whatever are comfortable with and shoot well, then just hunt with that weapon.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about, okay, you're hunting whitetails. Now, are you river bottoming or are you spot and stalking? Tell me the strategies.
With the whitetail, it kind of depends. I mean, really, so a lot of times we sit in tree stands or ground blinds, kind of depends on where we are on a property. Or if we're like, hey, today is a better day to just go after them, the wind is right, then we'll just go on foot. But most of the time for the whitetails, we're not spot and stalking. Mule deer, we usually are. So I'd say most of the time we're out of a blind for whitetail.
So do you prefer ground blinds or hang on?
It depends on the location. I like ground blinds, but they're sometimes hard to maneuver around, as everybody knows. You know, you bump into parts of the blind. You got to make sure you can pull your bow back. I think I prefer the tree stand, but then again, it gets cold here. I mean, we live in the north, and if you want to hunt in November in the middle of a snowstorm, be prepared to get the wind blowing on you and the snow blowing on you.
That's why a lot of people have gone to crossbows if they're legal in your state, and I think most states are legal now, because you're shooting a crossbow, so it's very similar to a rifle. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot easier to maneuver. I know back when I shot compound, I wouldn't shoot it out of a blind. I just wouldn't do it. But then with the crossbow, it's a completely different story. Yeah,
I'd have to check. For some reason, I want to say that now it's still, you have to have a license or a permit or a doctor's note to get them here. They're pretty stringent, I know, on their crossbow laws.
So, folks, no matter where you're hunting in the United States, don't assume that you can hunt with a crossbow, even though they're extremely popular. So check your local Fish and Game regs and just do it right.
If that interests somebody, I just haven't had the opportunity to really do it here, but definitely check with your Game Fish and Parks Department to see if that's allowable. I would hate to see somebody run off and do this then thinking they can do it. But
For sure. Hey, since you were a competitive swimmer in college, how has that helped you become a better hunter?
Well, there's a lot of arm strength involved. So first of all, I think pulling the bow, the poundage back, I've always had that shoulder muscle and that, upper back muscle just from swimming. We used to swim in college. Gosh, we went D1, so we would swim 4 hours a day sometimes, mostly 3 hours a day. So that's still kind of instilled with me to this day. I swim quite a bit every week and do other activities as well. I think that part, the physical aspect of being able to pull the bull back, the mental aspect of every day is not going to be a great day. You're not going to have a great hunt every single hunt. You didn't have a great swim meet or great race every single race. And I think that that's just prepared me for some levels of disappointment sometimes, but that's life. That's hunting, that's sports, that's game, that's everything associated with that. So I think those two factors in and of themselves, I've got a hard work ethic too, just from being in college sports and so much discipline and, being accurate and all that kind of stuff, that I think that has definitely flowed over from the competitive swim world now into the hunting world.
When you think back, what do you wish your husband had taught you when you were starting off hunting?
I wish I would have worn warmer clothes a lot of times. Maybe that's one of the biggest ones because, like I said, I think the first time I shot a mule deer with a rifle here, it was -17. And it was my finger, actually, the bottom finger, so my middle finger, froze to the trigger guard, and I had frostbite. So, yeah, wear gloves if it's of that temperature. I'll just tell people that. And I wasn't outside for very long. We were outside a very short period of time. I wish there was gear at that time developed for my little hands because its gear has come a long way in the last 7-8 years. And I had a hard time wearing gloves and shooting at the same time. So that was one thing. I think I should have invested in a lot better bow, but how do you kind of know that in hindsight if you don't like it? What if I would have shot that mule deer and been like, yeah, this really isn't for me. So why would you invest the money in it? Not saying that one wasn't nice, but get an upgrade to even a nicer bear bow. So I think those are two things that I would do differently.
So you'd look at clothing gear and then actually your hunting gear and get the best you can when you start. I think it's smart just to get the best you can, buy a second-hand bow or whatever, getting started, and test the waters and say, yeah, this is something I want to get into because there's plenty of places to spend your money, that's for sure.
Exactly. I mean, don't skimp on. There's a lot of things you can skimp on in life, and sometimes there's things that are not worth skimping on. Like if a bow is so cheap, it's so defective that you can get hurt while shooting it. I mean, that's not a good idea. Make sure your equipment's all functional and working. It fits you and it's right for you.
Let's talk about tremendous growth women are enjoying in the outdoors. Manufacturers are certainly focusing on the women's segment of the market, the outdoor market. Why do you think that's happening?
I think just the sheer growth in the number of women. And also, I think there's been a lot of companies that have started out as obviously the clothing or the gear was designed for men. They have already branched off, but now I think there's a lot of companies that are women starting clothing and women starting specific brands because they know that even the women's line that came off of a men's line still is not functional. I mean, I'm part of something right now. We're developing a specific camo for a Zir gear. It's coming out soon. They're already on Instagram and stuff, so you guys can check them out. And they are a company it's a woman who started the company, and she's receiving a lot of feedback from women that some things still are not right after this many years of development and growth within the industry. For me, there's no pants that come in long. I'm 5'8" and have the legs of a 6 person. So I can never find pants that fit. I know everybody has that problem. Everybody can tell me all their leg problems and we all can chime in together about how pants don't fit. But I think that's a big one for me. And I think that this new company coming out is really going to help revolutionize issues that we have all had, all kind of bringing them together as one for the women-dominated hunting society and be able to provide some gear that's fully functional for all of us.
Share the name of the company?
It's Zir Gear.
Okay, and how do you spell that?
AZYRE, and then they're located on Instagram.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that company. Yeah, I'd love to have them on the show and talk about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and all that. So if you know somebody there, tell them to get a hold of me.
Okay, I will do. And they're the new line's coming out fall of 2019, I believe, and we're getting some new stuff organized here in the next couple of weeks. So it's always good whenever you meet a connection of somebody else who's willing to listen to your gripes about some of the gear that's out there. So it's perfect timing for me.
Well, that's awesome. Now, since you're a couple of years down the road, what advice would you give women who are just starting out bow hunting?
I think you should not be afraid to ask for help. I know there's a lot of people that want to get started, like how I happened to fall into the hands of somebody who knew what they were doing. So I think if you want to do it and you have it in the back of your mind, find somebody out there who can help you and who can guide you. And, it could be another woman, it could be a parent or a sibling or whatever, a friend. Just find somebody out there who can help you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Certainly people like to be independent, but if you have a question or a concern, bring that up. Even ask your local game and fish department. They might be able to mentor you up with somebody if you can't think of anybody.
Now, what about practicing? If somebody came up and said, hey, how do I get started shooting my bow? What do you recommend for practicing?
As far as a bow or how many times a week? Currently, I actually have an old Matthews Jewel. That was my second bow I got, but now I'm shooting the Matthews Avail. It depends on the person, really. I do triathlons, and everybody told me to get a felt bike, and I went to the shop and I tried out a Trek, and lo and behold, the Trek fit me better. So it's all about you, your draw length, your ergonomics. It's all going to be different for each and every individual. best bet is to go to a bow shop and try it out. So I'm not trying to endorse any brands, just that one worked well for me. And certainly if you want to go to a bow shop, they should be able to help you out and you should be able to try a few different kinds of bows.
Busy girl, or lady, we talked about that in the warm-up to the show. What other things are you and your husband involved in?
Well, basically my second life is I do triathlons. I'm on a circuit here in South Dakota, and I'm hoping to do some bigger races throughout the country in the next couple of years. I'm just getting started on my first year on the circuit, so I wanted to kind of just get my feet wet, no pun intended, I guess. Just see exactly what it's all about and meet the people and understand the sport, because it's just a whole nother, it's not just swimming. You got 2 other disciplines involving transitions as well in there. So we spend a lot of time doing that. When I have time available, we'll help instruct through bow hunters education through the state of South Dakota, young bow hunters usually, and sometimes just men and women who haven't taken the course, help them get involved in the outdoors. I also coach, I guess it's kind of coach. Sometimes we have different events throughout Pierre for kids. And so when they need shotgun instructors, I help go coach and teach the safety and all that stuff for the kids. And I also do the same thing, but for our ladies event, which is becoming an outdoorswoman here in South Dakota. So I go and teach how to shoot sporting clays and all the gun safety and handling along with that. So I'm usually either pretty much working out or instructing my whole life.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I hate to see your calendar because it's got to be pretty jam-packed.
I actually don't even write on a calendar, and I just have ongoing lists in my head. I told my husband that the other day. I said, there's just a list going just constantly like a movie script, it's going on in my head at all times. So I actually have a hard time writing things down, and I don't know why, but our schedule's jam-packed. We're also in a trap shooting league on Wednesday nights. We're about almost halfway through the season here in the next few weeks with that, and it's just been great to meet other people, and people who shoot shotguns might be different than people who shoot bows. So we can meet different kinds of people throughout Pierre and throughout central South Dakota and their passion.
Do you want to become a smarter whitetail hunter, knowing when to hunt, where to hunt, how to hunt? Over the past 4 years, people have asked me, hey, I'm struggling with spending all day in the woods and never seeing a deer, only getting opportunities at doe or young bucks, leaving the woods empty-handed too many seasons. Located the deer of a lifetime, but just flat out missed. Having difficulties finding a place to hunt, recognizing mistakes that you're making over and over again, and you want to eliminate them. Having tried and failed to find qualified mentors. Well, you've come to the right place. Why? Because Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 was created by me, Bruce Hutchin. It's a 13-module course that'll talk about being lost in the deer hunting forest, never hunted. What is a hunter? What is an adult onset hunter? What rules apply? Finding a mentor, choosing a weapon, finding a place to hunt, scouting a hunt location, stand sites, stand access and exit, reading sign, and when to hunt. All these are available for you at deerhuntinginstitute.com. Go now to deerhuntinginstitute.com and sign up for the best deer hunting course in America. I shot collegiate trap, and I really enjoyed that. A lot of fun. Met a lot of different people, traveled throughout central part of the United States doing that. So I sure enjoyed that.
Yeah, I certainly have. This is my 3rd year, and the first year I did not enjoy it. I think I averaged about 15, and I thought I was really good. Or I don't know, I thought it was good some days. I thought it was good if I got an 18. And so I think I've come a long way since then. So it's been fun to watch myself just progress and grow. What I've learned is different about those kind of sports is with triathlon, I can work harder and perform better. But sometimes you think about shooting really hard and you don't perform better. So it's just a whole different kind of cat. And when you get over to the trap range than it is at the swimming pool or the track.
Agreed. What do you do for work up there?
I am an asset manager or wealth manager. I work for my dad. He's the main manager out of Hastings, Minnesota. So the company is called Collins Wealth Management. And I consider myself, since I coach so much and do so much coaching, just a personal financial coach for people from birth all the way through retirement and beyond. And my perfect kind of client, I guess you could say, is really relatively anybody. I have pretty low minimums, and I just love working with people, and I love to be honest with them and to really just establish a friendship and relationship and help them getting them on the path to their own financial success.
Now, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
You can reach out to me just through my regular email, which is, and I got to make sure I spell my name correctly because this can be always kind of confusing. It's salliedoty@gmail.com. So it's SALLIEDOTY@gmail.com. So it's just my name, all one word, no fancy dashes or periods in there, just my name at gmail.com. If you want to talk hunting or whatever, that's great. I can answer you back on there. Otherwise, if you want to do anything financially related, I'll just direct you to my other email, my work email from there. If you want to reach me on Facebook, that's the same thing. It's just Sallie Doty. LinkedIn is just Sallie Doty. And then Instagram is Sallie_Doty. So I try and keep things relatively simple for people. So as long as you can spell my name correctly, you can find me about anywhere.
Well, that's great. I wish you well with your career, and the outdoors is a great place to spend time, but we all have to make a living too. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
No, so your husband looks at you. What does he see you developing into a hunter? I know you want to hunt elk. I don't know if that's going to be in the Dakotas or out in the Rockies. What's your hunting plan?
I think we have eventually, I don't know, is it the Big 12 or the Big 10 American? I can't think of the word.
There's 28. There's 28.
Wow. Well, isn't there the wild or the big game? Isn't there a number? I can't remember specifically, but I think that elk is next on our list for sure. We have elk in South Dakota. There's not as many, so it takes a long time to get tags. We just haven't ever ventured out beyond South Dakota to hunt much. We went to Florida this year for Osceola turkeys, and we both got our turkeys down there. And we've whitetail hunted up in North Dakota a few years back. But I think that the elk is the next thing. I'm in decent shape. I don't know if I'm in like mountain climbing shape. I'm a pretty flat road kind of person around here, but we've got some hills. But I think that I would need some additional extra training. I think if I was going to go out and discover the mountains a little bit and do a DIY hunt, I think that'd be a lot of fun though.
Well, it is, and Wyoming isn't that far, and there's elk all over Wyoming, and that's a great state. Obviously, over-the-counter tags in Colorado where I live. And then Montana, you get the Missouri breaks with takes a long time to get a tag up there, but some monster elk up in that country. So there's plenty of opportunity right within 10 hours of where you are. You're in really good elk country.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just know a lot of people leave Pierre for September and go drive out and come back a few days later, and then go back out. So it's around, it's there, it's within reach. We just need to get our stuff together and go do it.
Now, do you do any bird hunting, upland game hunting at all?
We do. We've got 2 bird dogs at home, and it's kind of like a filler, I guess you could say. If you're like, oh, nothing's in season today, what should we go do? Oh, pheasants. So that's kind of like our, I would say our filler for the year is always, if we got nothing to do, let's go after the birds today and let the dogs work.
Now, when you shot your first doe, let's go back and tell that story about how you found it, how you set up, how you took the shot. Just unpack that for me.
I was actually in a ground blind, which is kind of different, but it was towards the end of the season. Like I said, the temperature of this one was really cold too. It was actually the last day of archery season, which was, I believe, December 30th or 31st back then. I can't remember. But it was very, very cold. And I know I went out and I had my bow and I could hardly almost pull it back just because I was so cold. I mean, it was just blistering cold that evening or afternoon, evening. And we had some deer kind of come in. They didn't really present a great shot, and they kind of walked off. And some were poking at like what was left of the grass because it was mostly kind of half snow covered. And I had one doe kind of eventually staring at me, kind of looking down, staring at me, turning a little bit. And eventually she gave me the opportunity to put the old heart and lung shot on her. And so I shot her, and all I remember was I knew it was a good shot, and I did what I'm not supposed to do, but I got out of the blind and started dancing, and my husband could see me from far away because he was watching through like basically a spotting scope because he could see it was a couple miles down the road, but he goes, oh gosh, she must have shot something. And so, I should have just stayed in the blind and waited for the deer to she went down in the draw, but I was just so excited. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I'd been waiting for that moment till the last day of the season. I tried so hard just to get a doe, back then. And it was such an accomplishment that I don't dance much, but I figured at that point in time that seemed necessary for me.
Agreed. Good for you. So the doe didn't go too far?
It was kind of on a top of a flat area. And then she just kind of went down the draw and was pretty well deceased, by the time Ben got over. And so she was done pretty quick, but she went down in the draw, which I guess mule deer sometimes will do that. You don't want them to go down too far because then it's, you got to haul deer out, but they're going to do what they're going to do. You can't control that.
So why'd you have the blind in that place?
There was like a crossing point. I believe, because they were going back into the trees. They were out in the fields for a long time, eating all day. And they were going to go back into like the breaks into the trees. And that was kind of like not necessarily an edge effect, but it was where they were trail, kind of just off the beaten trail from them.
So you just waited there and intercepted them?
Yep, pretty much. And they were picking around at whatever grass was left. I mean, there wasn't much left, and trying to find whatever they could at that point because they were moving. I mean, they have to. They can't just stand still when it's that cold outside. I mean, it was well below zero.
So that memory will stay with you forever, no matter what game you do take, your first deer.
Yes, the fact that I can remember the date. I can't tell you the dates on all the other deer I've harvested. I can get pretty close. I know, that one was October, this one was early November, but I remember specifically that one. And I even know who was playing because it was the Vikings versus the Packers. I'm a Vikings fan and my husband's a Packers fan. And all I told him, I said, I'm going to shoot a deer and the Vikings are going to win. And the Vikings won. I shot a deer.
Well, good on you. That's a great story. Yeah, the NFL, especially Packer-Viking games, have ruined many good hunts, that's for sure.
And families, I'm sure.
Well, we're Packer fans. That's where I went to school. My wife's from Green Bay. And
oh, cool.
And so that's the history behind that. Hey, thanks for listening to the show tonight. Before we go, can I take a moment and say thank you? Listen, as we started the Whitetail Rendezvous podcast journey, we had no idea what to expect. But after 4 years, we received a ton of feedback from our over 400,000 listeners and climbing to 500,000. Speaking of which, we are now closing in on over 600 featured guests. Thank you. And a quick shout out to all those who have left an iTunes review and your feedback. I get those and really appreciate it. And it's awesome to see what you have to say, and we do read every single one of them. And I just want you to know that I am incredibly grateful for your kind words regarding the show. And all of the ratings and reviews help us attract more listeners. And if you're one of those new listeners, welcome. Great to have you. By the way, if you haven't taken the time to rate and review our show and like the Hunting on Private Land strategy on how to get permission to hunt a private property, go to whitetailrendezvous.com as a special gift for just rating and reviewing our show. When you get there, look for the start button to get the details. Listen, I'll share you the top technique from some of the top hunters in the country on how do they get permission to hunt on private land. I'll share with you the exact techniques they use to get permission. As my way of saying thanks for rating and reviewing the show on iTunes. So join us next time. And remember, we're all on this journey together, learning, sharing, and becoming 365 hunters. You think about women's role. Where do you think your role is going to be as you mature as a hunter and an outdoors woman?
I think it's changed throughout the last 7 years, from going from being a student now to me more of a leader and a teacher. There's a lot of people that have contacted me in town who've said, I've never shot a bow before. Will you come down to Farm Island, which is a campground that has an archery range, and help me out? Or can you bring your bow down? I can see if I like that one. And I think it's just, I'm getting more enjoyment out of that, I think, than I am going out every day for myself sometimes, which is always good that you enjoy getting more people into the outdoors than you worrying about whether you got to go shoot today. So I think that's how I'm transforming. I'm just becoming more of that leadership role, which is great. I really thoroughly enjoy being a teacher and a coach. So I'm glad when people feel comfortable enough, because like I said earlier, it's always great when people feel comfortable enough to contact somebody who could help them get into the outdoors, because that's your first step. You can think about it as long as you want, but until you go do something, nothing's ever going to happen.
No, are you a blogger? Have you written any articles?
I've helped to do a few with, now I got to remember the name. This was a while back. I think it was She Lives Outdoors. There was some firearm reviews, some stuff like that. On my experiences, I share that through Facebook, Instagram. I don't blog or have a separate YouTube page for anything like that to go over my experiences there. Maybe I should. I just have never thought of doing that, but it might be interesting enough for me. I just have to keep up with it. That's always my problem.
Yeah, with your calendar and your mental calendar, you need a publicist, I think.
I think so, too.
Plus, you're working.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I try to balance everything the best I can. But, there's always ideas in my head. If it sounds like a good idea, maybe I'll get into it.
Do you have any questions of me?
No, I guess, I want to know how you got into it, or what's your story? How did you get into all this?
When I was approximately 10 years old, I lived in Foster Center, Rhode Island, and I had a neighbor called Otto Knight. He basically mentored me as a young kid, and we had a single action 20 gauge in the house. My dad used to shoot, unfortunately had rats around our property, so you use that to shoot the rats. And so I would take that and I'd go out and I'd hunt rabbits and ruffed grouse. I can't remember the date, but there was snow on the ground and I went out looking for ruffed grouse. And when it snows, the ruffed grouse dive into the snow and they leave feather print on the snow. And so I knew when one was there. So I was all ready and the ruffed grouse busted out of the snow and flew. And I put the gun up and pulled the trigger and I got my first ruffed grouse at about 10 years old. An adventure since then. It's just been incredible. And that was over 60 years ago that happened. And then when I went to college in La Crosse, Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin, I was working in a bar and the owner of the bar said, "Hey, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?" I lived in New York at that time. And I said, "Well, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to any place for a week." And he said, "Well, why don't you come home with me and we'll go deer hunting?" So I worked extra hours, got a shotgun with some slugs, got a pair of rubber boots, got some coveralls and a hat, bought a license, and I did all that for under $100, folks, and went to my friend's farm. And the neat part about it, I still hunt the same farm today.
Oh, wow.
And the family still owns it. And it's along the Baraboo River in Wisconsin. And that was the beginning of it. If anybody goes to whitetailrendezvous.com, you can read about everything that I've done. But I never lost that love. And two people, Otto Knight in Rhode Island and then Harry Shear in Wisconsin, basically helped me and mentored me. Dick Rogers took me to the farm, but those two gentlemen really helped me get into hunting and taught me a lot. And because Harry was the first guy I ever talked to that went to Wyoming, and this is in the 60s and 70s, he went to Wyoming every single year, mule deer, antelope, and then they go back for elk. And he was a great hunter. He really good. And so he was very successful. So I always dreamed about doing what he did. And lo and behold, I did.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I was always just curious as to how you got into it. And from a young age of 10 there, a lot younger than me, I was 22, everybody.
And so I just always had the desire. And then when I retired, my good friend Bob Rourke said, "You're going to do a podcast about whitetail hunting." And this was back in 2014. The fall, I had just gotten back from being gone for a couple of months hunting. He said, "You're going to do a whitetail podcast." And so we started it in March of 2015. So there we are today, and we're coming out with our new course, Deer Hunting Institute Part 1, which is a basic hunting course, gives people some tips, techniques, strategies so they can hunt. So that'll be coming out later this summer, and I'm excited about that. And then I'm also Deer Hunting Institute Part 2. I'm thinking it's going to be a women's course. And so I'm talking to women now about, okay, what do women need? Is it any different than men, or it's not different? It's all the same. So what do women really need to understand when they're starting to hunt? And then Deer Hunting Institute Part 3 will be becoming a 365 hunter, which you are engaged in something 365. So I'm speaking to the choir with you, but enough of me. So any closing remarks to the ladies listeners out there?
I'm just going to reiterate what I said before. If you don't know of anybody and want to ask questions, certainly shoot me an email. If there's nobody else you can think of and you have questions on gear or types of bows, rifles, where to hunt, any questions about South Dakota specifically, different kinds of game, I'm all up for it. Like I said, salliedoty@gmail.com. Shoot me an email or find me on social media, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions and get you started.
And with that, we're going to end this episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. Sallie, thanks so much for being a great guest, and I can't wait till we talk next winter and find out how the 2019 season went.
I can't wait either. Thank you so much for having me, Bruce.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.